Welcome, Nolan, Bitcoiner. Another episode of The Breakup. Episode 21, I think. I'm getting there. I've only missed a couple days. In Lisbon, I missed one traveling. But that's really part of the exercise here for me is to do this every single day because this is what I think about every day. And today's episode, I think, really gets to the point of why you should break up with fiat, what utility the entire economy around the dollar still has for you as someone out there trying to make sense of where the world's going. So that's why we like predictions on this show. Bitcoiners constantly make predictions. That's kind of the point of early Bitcoin, was to predict a complete change in consumption habits and how we measure economic output. In fact, how we measure the economy, because we currently measure the economy in US dollars. That's sort of the measuring stick. Think of it again, I mention this a lot, it's a little bit like water and the metric system. So the degrees, 1 degree, 2 degree, the temperature, they're not arbitrary. They took water, they said the boiling point, it's 100. Here's the point at which it boils. We're going to call that 100. The point at which it freezes was 0, right? So 0 to 100, they just divided that into equal units. And then everything after, the coldest it gets in Celsius is minus 273 Kelvin, right? But that's still based off of water, right? So that's the Kelvin system is still based off the metric system, in some sense, I think. But it's able to chart and we're all able to reference from water. Now, the reason why inflation is so insidious, especially with the reserve currency, and why it can change entire psychological habits and really change the psychology engine of the economy, right? So one thing I like to say in this show is that although we're dealing with math and numbers, although we're dealing with numbers, we're not dealing with math, really, right? We're dealing with the psychology behind the money. People think that whoever wins the debate between the Austrian school and the modern monetary theory, and then that's the system. It's not true. No one's going to win a debate here, right? The Austrian school is a way to understand some effects on monetary policy. I don't think it's a catch-all. It's a useful frame, but it doesn't really apply to things that are so complex that we can't understand. And one of those is the entire economy and inflation. It's sort of beyond the sight of any single human. However, what you can do is look at the psychology behind those systems and predict which one has more legs, right? So yesterday's show, for example, was all about security. And that, in fact, a system that doesn't provide security will be abandoned. And a system that offers security will be embraced. And so we talked a little bit about food security, physical security, and a few things. And discussed how Bitcoiners might be able to fix that on their own terms. But today, it's mostly about predictions and whose advice you should follow, more or less, right? So what I want to start with today is so this is someone made this emoji, which I love. It's really the clown world theory, and then the yin and yang and Bitcoin, and I kind of love it. I might make it the logo for the show. Which I call the breakup. So today, all we're going to do is compare the self-tenured system. Someone wrote a very provocative post on Twitter that got me thinking, and offers, I think, a useful frame to use to get advice and filters on the future, right? So the self-tenured one versus this sort of experts model, I think, offers a really useful lens to look forward. Now, I'll explain what self-tenured is. It's a guy named Sam Lessin. I tweeted it out. I did one of the screenshots with the full post. And it's a theory that I've been working on for quite a while. Self-tenured basically means rich, right? You're rich enough to be unemployable, right? Not unemployed, unemployable. So I'd say I'm in that category, right? I left a really great job with even a crypto company, a major exchange, one of the top 5 exchanges in the world. Because even working at a job in crypto became a little complicated. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. So, as much as I love cryptocurrencies, strategizing for an exchange was great while I needed a job. I just am at a level where I'm self-tenured and I can do what I want, and the show is what I want to do. And just sharing the mindset and frames that I've had over the years. So I actually interviewed CZ about this back in May, the self-tenured idea. What I called it for that was Binance Mafia, right? Binance Mafia, Binance is an exchange like the one I worked for, Kraken. And Binance Mafia simply means that there's enough rich people within Binance to then turn into a set of investors. The whole concept originally dates to the PayPal Mafia. The PayPal Mafia, if you didn't know, is Peter Thiel, who started PayPal. And then, of course, Elon Musk came in. David Sachs, who's got just the best podcast, second best podcast in the world. I'll always give Scott Adams the best podcast, recognition. But the one that Jason Calacanis and David Sachs have started with the other guy who owns the basketball team, Chamath, is awesome, only because of David Sachs, in my opinion. I like Chamath, okay, Kalkanis can do without. Provocative, I like it, but I still haven't buried the hatchet over his Biden love. So anyone who predicts Biden, I predicted him to win, but I mean, like, embraced him and was kind of like, oh, disgusted by Trump. Personally, I would say I'm not saying you have to be a fan of Trump, right? I get why people were triggered by him, but if you were really that disgusted by him, and you're not going to acknowledge what you helped usher in, well, I don't know if your full opinion is still valid. Although I still listen to the podcast and think Jason Calacanis is fine. It's probably my problem. He probably triggered me too much. But I love David Sachs. So he's one of these PayPal Mafia folks. And the reason why the PayPal Mafia is so important, of course, is because they all went on to fund a million other things, right? So they made a fortune off of PayPal in that, sort of early internet time. And then each of them has created amazing companies and changed entire industries. And Elon Musk there's no better example. We saw it again when Coinbase went public. People started saying Coinbase Mafia, right? So the Coinbase Mafia, Coinbase minted, I don't know how many millionaires, a lot. And there's more exchanges coming that'll do the same, I'm sure. So Coinbase, that's where people start to repeat that Coinbase, the PayPal Mafia, Coinbase Mafia. I said Binance Mafia too, right? So Binance Mafia being part of that, but that was just the title of my show. It was the one that had, we had Tom Brady on right after. It was the end of our big consensus show at CoinDesk this year. So I interviewed CZ, who founded Binance, on this exact subject. And so this self-tenured piece is important because when you look at these folks in crypto and in Bitcoin in particular, they're making an awful lot of predictions. And as angel investors, they're of course making a ton of bets on the future, right? They wouldn't be investing in stuff unless they thought the future had whatever to offer. And what you see a lot of these folks investing in are a world where there is some form of abundance. It's certainly not people scrounging and eating bugs and trying to like survive, right? The things they're investing in suggest radical abundance for the entire world, and an abundance that leads to what we would recognize as a luxury lifestyle, but for almost everybody, right? So examples would be what we see in El Salvador with Bitcoin City. You hear a lot of Citadel discussion amongst Bitcoiners, which is building these private city states that would more or less take care of a lot of their needs, and they can use that to then develop all kinds of Bitcoin native industries. Just even in the idea of artists reaching markets much faster with personal tokens and NFTs and just the whole idea of issuance to begin with, right? Many crypto people have been issuers of one sort or another from the very beginning. Like Bitcoin showed everyone the model for how to create these digital assets, and then it just became, activity to release them. And just 1 second, I got to go deal with some noise upstairs. It's a little loud. I'll be right back. Children, children, children running around. We love our children, obviously, but they can be loud. But that's okay. We're self-tenured. We're self-tenured. So, all of these crypto folks, Bitcoin folks, off on their own projects now that are exciting and really sort of fueling and funding all kinds of industries. You look at Balaji Srinivasan, who was really one of the first people to embrace this sort of self-tenured mindset, right? Talked about it a lot about the Coinbase mafia. He was a member of it. I think he was already self-tenured way before that, but he was a member of this Coinbase mafia, and now as far as I can tell, is mostly giving away his entire fortune in order to fund a more exciting future, particularly in media, right? So, and I bring that up because it's really where things are headed next in the contrast here, this experts piece, right? So, you've got people like Balaji Srinivasan and all kinds of Binance mafia, Coinbase mafia, Bitcoin rich, all these folks, right, that are from this world of self-tenureship, right? So they can't be fired and they're unemployable, yet they have enough money to invest in all of these ideas. What I'm saying is the ideas they're investing, this is the important part, the ideas they're investing in predict an abundant future where everyone is living a lifestyle that we would recognize as luxury today. There might not be consuming as many um, you know, dollar store things. I'd say that is sort of not gonna make it. But beautiful homes and beautiful locations, inexpensive means of transportation, massive amounts of travel, and with the Bitcoin mining, with the volcanoes. I think you're going to see even forms of terraformation and pushing the limit of where humans can live, and that's definitely on the mind of a lot of folks in Bitcoin. When you detach a nuclear reactor from a population center, as we've built them until now, right? We build these nuclear reactors near cities, and there's risks because of people and meltdowns and da da da. But the next generation of nuclear reactors perhaps have engineered away the risk of meltdown. But also, if it's Bitcoiners buying them, they don't even need to be near population centers anymore. They can be pushed onto the frontier of places that are maybe not habitable for humans today, but with a bit of energy and a bit of terraformation, probably will be. Deserts, the Sahara Desert, for example, is big. The whole Sahara Desert, as it is today, is bigger than the United States of America. That's just land we don't do anything with. But there are means to terraform it, right? So Bitcoiners are actually thinking about this a lot. This is not a little thing that Bitcoiners think about. They think about getting nuclear reactors and building citadels in heretofore uninhabitable land, in order to, sort of promote the full blossoming of humanity, right? So lots of space, lots of abundance, and lots of you know creation and manipulation of the environment to create better conditions for higher standard of living for people everywhere. Now, the system we have today, so that's the self-tenured system. These people come from anywhere. You don't know who they are. From a profile point of view, they could have been, uneducated, educated, you name it, right? They're sort of in all categories. You can get, the sort of stacked resumes like a Meltem Demir's, right? Who's definitely self-tenured. Uh, I used to work with her in the early days when we both had jobs. DCG, one of the bigger VCs or anything in place, one of the biggest investing houses in the whole industry, owners of CoinDesk and some of the other ventures that I've spent a lot of time with. This is a girl who's got an MIT education, an actual scientist, right? And now completely free because of the wealth she's managed to generate, and is investing in literally any project that she finds interesting, looking for great projects constantly, right? So a lot of folks in the industry are up to that right now. And they don't care if they have a return. It's really just let's spread this out and see if everyone can make it, right? Now, this opposite here, you've got the Bitcoin and you've got the clown world, right? So let's look today at what the expert. So the contrast again. The important thing for this show is the contrasting visions of the future, right? That's what I want you to take from um, the utility, not even utility. That's what I want you to remember from the usefulness of these projections, because if we go back and test it, we'll have a better idea of their worldview today, right? So predictions work because you predict into the future. If you're right, it means that your assessment of the current situation was probably pretty good, right? So Bitcoiners investing in all of these things in the future because the future is bright, according to most Bitcoiners. But let's take the contrast, right? Let's find out what they said today in the Hollywood Reporter, right? The Hollywood Reporter, like a low-level media agency, right? Low level, like not high quality. But it's the first one, the first media outlet that I've seen admit the following. And this was about they're going to make a movie on John McAfee, an old Bitcoiner who died. Who knows how? Says he killed himself, but he said he would never kill himself. But I don't. We're not going to talk about that. Someone's making a movie. The person who made that movie had made one earlier called about RussiaGate, the plot against the president. So anyone who's followed these experts, right, over the past few years knows, and didn't follow anyone from here, any of the self-tenured people, right? Anyone who followed the experts over the last few years will be under the impression that Trump, of course, worked with Russians and that they looked into it, and then maybe it was okay, Mueller and collusion and all that stuff, right? But of course, anyone who was outside of that bubble knew the whole thing was a scam from the start, right? That there was no Russia collusion. It was the Hillary Clinton campaign projecting what they had actually done onto the Trump campaign, and this was widely understood by everyone that the intelligence community had been compromised. They had worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign in mainstream media to push suggestions that the Steele dossier, was real, right? Everyone suspected at the time the Steele dossier was bullshit, and now months later, of course, years later, we find out it totally is. And it didn't matter that Mueller exonerated him and all these other things happened. People still left with this impression. It took a lot for people to look at the truth. Now the Hollywood Reporter, who's probably not expert enough, right? That's the only reason why we're getting it, as far as I can tell. They're not expert enough, right? But they wrote today that according to the Justice Department indictment released earlier this month, the contents of the dossier were deliberately concocted lie, now denounced as fraudulent by the FBI. Okay. So all kinds of self-tenured people told you months and years ago that the thing was stupid and you should ignore it. But the experts who'd gone to the universities, worked for the Justice Department, worked for the NSA, worked for the CIA, they would go on to MSNBC, expert, 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 here's my title, worse than Watergate, da 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 da. Believe us, he's in the bag with the Russians. So they got it wrong, right? So failure of experts, right? Let's move on, right? There's more of these. So today in the New York Times, right? A lot of experts at the New York Times, right? Farah Stockman, no idea who she is. I don't even care. An opinion writer, right? Says, is visiting your family bad for the planet? Is visiting your family bad for the planet? Because it's Thanksgiving in America and it's the biggest travel day and everyone's moving around. She's suggesting that you shouldn't travel because of some environment thing, right? Like we're all going to die if everyone travels at the holidays and whatever years, right? To me, this sounds like religious stuff, and I've been calling a lot of the global warming parts of it religion for a long time, right? And here's an interesting thing in French: l'effet de serre, greenhouse effect. L'effet de serre est l'enfer, hell. L'effet de serre, l'enfer. They kind of rhyme, right? CO2 emissions and hell literally rhyme in French. L'effet de serre, l'enfer. Um, it was impossible for me growing up being a bilingual person to not see the parallels between Catholic mindset, global warming, and the way hell was used, massively in that religion. So, here's another instance of they're predicting that there'll be some penalty for humanity in X years if you all travel, and you shouldn't travel because you got to make sure the penalty doesn't come. Super religious thinking, right? Like, I mean, incredibly religious. Um, so here's another one, right? Is anyone in Bitcoin saying don't travel? Are there any of the self-tenured people out there saying, "Oh, you shouldn't travel"? And I'm not saying just listen to rich people here. That's not what I'm saying. I'm sure there are rich people who say don't travel, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, are there any Bitcoiners that are telling you not to travel for holidays that are rich, right? I just can't. I can never imagine any Bitcoiner that I know, any Bitcoiner who's rich, saying, shouldn't travel because it's the holidays, and if everyone travels, then in like 100 years, maybe we'll get like a bit more rain or something. It's just never going to happen, right? Just forget it. And especially not promoted at the highest levels according to expert credential. We got a bunch of degrees, and then it's in the New York Times, right? I went to all these schools. When I tell you, don't go there, right? So New York Times, bad system. How about um, how about the trucking mandate, right? The trucking mandate. So I don't know if anyone caught this, but the experts, including the president, have now said that truckers, right, are going to get the vaccine mandate. So if they're going to cross borders, go between states, et cetera, they need to have the vaccine. Fine, right? We see the mandate going along everywhere. Why should they be exempt, right? Why should they be exempt is sort of the rationale. Well, here's the reason. We just managed to get out of a pretty tough supply chain issue, and I will say that the Biden administration did a fantastic job on that. Right, I think the fines they used to clear up the ports and getting empty containers out looks like it worked fine. Right, so once again, we're not saying no room for experts at all. We're just looking at their predictions here, right? The institutions that use experts to predict and then help you calibrate your behavior, right? So experts, welcome, right? So experts did help solve this problem, and looks like they solved it temporarily at least, right? But a new factor has now entered the game out of nowhere, just as they had averted disaster. The experts have come out and said that all these folks who are in the industry and don't get the vaccine are not going to be able to work anymore. So they've introduced another problem to the exact problem they just solved. Another factor, another criterion to the exact problem they just solved. And what you'll end up getting here, I think, is I'm predicting anyway, we're going to be right back in the same position if this holds. So while the experts can help, in this case, they were effective at one moment, it was completely undone by another set of experts not long after, right? So the experts themselves were fighting in this case, and it doesn't look like we're going to get results. And I think the supply chain crisis is going to, be right back where it started. Then you take another one. Look at Turkey. We were talking about Turkey yesterday and their inflation, right? So now it's not enough that there's inflation. It's not enough that the people are combating that. It's not enough that their president months ago declared war on Bitcoin, then created a panic sell of their currency um, just a few months later because of something he said. Basically saying that they weren't going to get the job done. So panic sell. You got someone on their state TV yesterday, and it's Saifedean Amos who shared this. And Saifedean is the writer of the book, The Fiat Standard and the Bitcoin Standard. Basically, what this show is all about, right? contrasting the fiat standard with the Bitcoin standard on a daily basis and using that as a frame to look at daily news and things like that. So Seyfedin shares this. He goes, and this was a newscaster in Turkey, who is, their mind is trying to adapt to the rapid inflation, the psychology engine of Turkey, and breaking down. And here's what the expert said. This is a major newscaster. Of course, we can assume the media is in the bag of the government in Turkey, but anyway. So what he goes out and says is that the currency crisis in Turkey means the labor is now cheaper, right? So because the labor is cheaper measured in dollars, Turkey, in his mind, is going to become a major producer and manufacturing hub, and everyone's going to go there for cheap labor in the world, and it's going to be great, right? Literally celebrating inflation and the loss of purchasing power internationally for Turks, saying that that's going to be a lot better. Of course, this is the height of folly. There's no endpoint to this kind of logic, right? So celebrating some minor potential sliver, which is never going to happen, by the way. No one is thinking, oh, I'm going to take advantage of Turkey's low exchange rate to set up businesses and hire a bunch of manufacturers there. It's crazy. Like, no one's going to Turkey to build action figures tomorrow because they're experiencing inflation today. It's just not going to happen, right? So you've got experts out there predicting, you shouldn't travel because it's going to create problems down the road. It's okay that the money is screwed up because we're going to turn into a manufacturing base anyway. Obviously, we're going to be a manufacturing base, like obviously, right? And then, the experts say that they know how to fix the trucking problem, but they can go right around and recreate it if another set of experts decide that something else is a problem that they have to solve. In this case, vaccines. So the important model here is to look at the future these groups are predicting, and then you yourself, like, this is not a do your own research thing either. Like, I don't know how to do research even on inflation, right? Like, I'm as close to an expert as you'll find on these things. I worked as a lawyer in the Senate Banking Committee in Canada. I worked for an exchange with the Federal Reserve, U.S. banking, a major media company, Manhattan-based media company. I'm, if there were an expert, if there was an expert, I'm as close as you're going to get. To some parts, I'm missing several talents, I think, to be um, to know and even understand Bitcoin fully better. I get it enough. I get the simple part, savings, right? Really important. And that's, my conclusion after years of studying. And in the end, it's simple enough if you look at it that way, right? But there's a whole field that I don't even understand. But all that to say, the vision of the folks on this side, the self-tenured, the folks like me, is that we have an abundant future, and you don't have to worry about the relative exchange rate of your domestic currency, because you can make up for losing international purchasing power with becoming a domestic manufacturer, or trucking being influenced by federal policies, or finally the catastrophe around not traveling because some religious belief that if you travel now in 100 years, your great grandchildren might have a worse world. It's absolutely a different vision, a starkly different vision of the future, and one you should certainly pay attention to. One is accurate, and one isn't. Of course, I believe the abundant future is accurate. I might be wrong, but I'm predicting a golden age around the corner, mostly powered by open sourced capitalism, which is only possible through Bitcoin and through more self-tenured people like myself, giving their vitality and energy towards this abundant future. Because if we leave it to the experts, you're not having turkey, you're not traveling to see your friends, and you can't leave your country because you're a manufacturing colony. All right, everyone, that's it for today. I'll catch you guys all online. I'll be tweeting out more. Some stuff in the book is going to be coming out today and in the next few days. All right, everyone. See you next time.